One of the draws to the show, they did start progressing their characters, and that is kind of at the point where I really started getting interested in the show.
There's one episode where Obi-Wan takes on a mission where he fakes his death and he lets Anakin think he's dead.
I forgot about that.
And Anakin, and there's a big moment because Anakin's really angry with him because he keeps seeing his trust broken
about that.
by Obi-Wan.
Yeah. Alright, hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm WarriorWoman91, and this is Theresa Campagna, also known as JesterBell on YouTube and Twitter. Give us likes, follows, and all that good stuff. Please like this video if you enjoy it, subscribe to this channel, and ring the bell for notifications, and additionally you can spit in the spittoon. Eventually we'll probably have a graphic on these videos that actually says spit in the spittoon, and you can click it and get something cool will happen, a planet will blow up and explode or something like that. You know.
We've rigged it.
Yes. But for now, just please ring the darn bell and like this video if you enjoy it. So today we're going to be talking about the Clone Wars series, the animated series. What year did that start? Was it 2010? I'm trying to remember.
I feel like it was 2009 or 2000.
Maybe the movie came out in 2009.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the movie.
Yeah, the movie probably came out in 2009, then we got 2010 with the TV show. So I just wanted to start off this video before we really get into it and say that I hated the movie.
As did I.
And the reason, let me dial this back. The reason why we're talking about this is Disney Plus released season 7 of the Clone Wars series that was originally created in the early 2010s. So we both hated the movie. I think I hated it more than you, and our brother hated it. But
well, this is going to be an overall talking about, because Star Wars: The Clone Wars became very good. Mm-hmm. But when it started, they always intended it to be a TV show, and but they got the movie out first as kind of the pilot, but they want it to be big enough so it'd be released in theaters. But the problem with the movie is that it made Star Wars very childish and very silly and there was even some cringe in there. Mm-hmm. And there's a problem with that because not only do you isolate your adult audience, but this was the problem with me, you isolate your child audience. I was the age group, I was 10 years old, I was the age group for the show, but 10-year-olds are watching the movie Star Wars. They're watching the originals and the prequel trilogy and all that, so that's what Star Wars is to them. And that was my problem with the movie when I saw it, because I'm like, Obi-Wan wouldn't act that silly, and I'm seeing all this goofy behavior from the characters. I'm like, they wouldn't act like this.
And part of the problem with that then is when you go too childish, because some of their jokes and plot points in the movies go so childish that they miss their child audience altogether, as she was saying, and they go even lower than the audience that they're actually targeting. So that seems to be a good explanation for. I mean, how old was I? I was just graduating.
You were still in high school.
I graduated high school the year the movie came out, if it was 2009, and then I was just getting into college, my early years in college. So if it's not even going to appeal to the 10-year-old here, then it certainly wasn't going to appeal to somebody who's approaching 20.
And I remember, I just don't think the movie was well liked among anyone my age, because I just remember people were like, it's too goofy, it's too childish, and at that point it hadn't really taken hold of people, but they still wanted to have the show. And I gotta talk about this going forward because it's gonna be important later. When she first appeared as a character, Ahsoka, I really hated her character because I felt that she was thrown in there and not making sense with the rest of the movies just to have the kid, or just to have a girl character who wasn't Padme. Yeah. But more so just to have the kid there and to have some child appeal. She was more of why I didn't like the movie, and how I just felt like the overall thing is just really dumbing down Star Wars. And I'm like, she's annoying, I don't like her, she doesn't make sense.
She was supposed to be the audience's eyes and ears for the 12-year-old audience, or whatever it happened to be that they were trying to attract.
Even though Ahsoka was supposed to be 14 in that movie, though she looked more 12.
She acted a lot younger.
Yeah, a lot younger. But so then the show came out, and at first it was a bit more of the same with the show. They had the similar tone. I don't think it was as silly as the movie. But very slowly they started to fade to make the Clone Wars a bit more actual Star Wars. It's amazing because if you watch the pilot, that's basically what the movie was. If you watch different episodes from the beginning and you watch something from season 3, 4, 5, 6, it's a completely different show.
Yeah, and I want to jump in there because I've been going back because when they released some of these new episodes, I didn't remember anything, and I was surprised by that because we became very obsessed with the show for a while because it did actually get good. But the fact that it's been so long now that I could barely remember characters. And so I've been going back to seasons 1, 2, and 3 to kind of refresh my memory, and I was watching some very early on season 1 episodes, and it's amazing how the show's tone changed because it started out just being kind of this action hero type show. They threw Ahsoka
something made to sell toys.
Yeah, something made to sell toys, something that the little boys would like, but they threw Ahsoka in there to get the girls in there and also to give it some kid appeal. So it's interesting how the show went from that to being kind of this almost political thriller with still some action stuff. They had a lot of politics in that show.
Yeah, they got into more political stuff, but I'll praise the politics because that's something people hate about the prequels, that there's a lot of boring political discourse. I thought they made it interesting in this show. For example, there's one episode where Padme she's arguing why they need to stop spending so much money on the war because it's actually hurting Coruscant and his people. And they actually get into it and get how the public is feeling about it and how it's affecting the public. And that's something they never did in Revenge of the Sith. You just see Coruscant, it seems normal place.
Yeah.
So I like how they did it
normal
in a way,
place with no foliage or grass or trees.
They did it in a way that made you maybe feel something for the citizens and maybe expand on the world a little bit. But
that's the thing. I think that's the thing that was appealing about the Clone Wars is it was about world building more than what we got in the movies, which we got a lot in the movies in the prequel trilogy, but it was even expanding upon that, which was one of the draws of the show.
What I was saying about the Clone Wars is the movie and the initial episodes of the series were very shallow, and then they started to be thoughtful and started to do things and started to think about what they could do with the characters. So Ahsoka might have still been conceived as a character to just bring in kids and bring in girls, but they started to work with her as someone who's challenging Anakin to mature, and that's what they talked about in interviews, how they always wonder, how did Anakin get to the whiny, angry kid in Attack of the Clones to a little bit calmer Jedi Knight in Revenge of the Sith? And so they started to think about how can we tie this in. I think that they did think a little bit of this in the Clone Wars movie, but they started to think, how can we tie this into the greater universe and character development of Star Wars? And that's one of the things I like about the Clone Wars is it develops Anakin's character. If you watch it in full, it develops his character a little bit better than the movies did. It shows a lot of various things that happened leading up to him being distrustworthy of the Jedi and distrustworthy of Obi-Wan. For example, there's one episode where Obi-Wan takes on a mission where he fakes his death and he lets Anakin think he's dead.
I forgot about that.
And Anakin, and there's a big moment because Anakin's really angry with him because he keeps seeing his trust broken by Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
And Ahsoka actually becomes a great character and one of my favorite Star Wars characters because she goes from
I wouldn't go that far for myself.
I really like her. I'll go on.
She definitely improves.
She changes, and I think it's interesting. It was brimming up for a while, but she really started to improve when, for me, when I saw that they were willing to age her up. They age her up from this annoying, not 12-year-old to she's supposed to be 16 when she gets the new design. She gets a much better look. Ashley Eckstein, who voices her, actually deepened her voice. Made her voice a lot less annoying. And
let me just jump in here because that's one of the pluses about the show. That's one of the draws to the show. They did start progressing their characters, and that is kind of at the point where I really started getting interested in the show because they started aging their characters. They started giving them features and new clothes to show that they had aged and stuff like that. And so that made me want to keep watching because I knew that meant the show was not going to stay the same.
It shows that there's change and they can be building to things we know are going to happen.
Yeah.
What I think is interesting about Ahsoka is she started out, and this was always the way, as Obi-Wan is trying to push Anakin to mature more. So he orchestrates a situation where basically he's going to put someone who is like Anakin with Anakin so that Anakin can understand the way he is.
Yeah.
So Ahsoka starts
It's kind of like a bit of a mirror so that Anakin can see, oh, that's why I'm annoying.
Yeah. So like Anakin, Ahsoka starts out as what they think is too young.
Yeah.
And she comes in and she's really reckless and really whiny Cody, and Anakin has to deal with her as she evolves in the show. It's interesting because
she becomes almost more mature than Anakin.
But she does. It's like she has his reckless streak, but she has it in a more mature, focused direction. Like she's still trying to do the right thing, whereas Anakin lets his emotions. But that's the thing.
Where he's going.
Watching, I watched the episodes where very climactic episode for Ahsoka. I won't reveal it just yet. We'll talk about it in a minute.
Yeah.
But throughout this episode I was watching, she's actually she's not losing her mind. She's not losing her emotions. She knows what she has to do. Anakin is losing his mind in the episode.
Yeah.
So that's...
We can talk about that in a minute, because we just watched it.
Yeah, I think that Ahsoka...
Hang on. Let's dial it back. We focused a lot on Ahsoka, but I want to talk about the show as a whole. Ahsoka is a big draw for the show, for a couple of reasons. I think first and foremost, she's not actually a Mary Sue character, and I think that's why people hated Rey so much, and that's why people now I think more than ever appreciate Ahsoka as a character, because she became an adult. We watched her go from child, annoying, obnoxious, to an adult who now I think she becomes more mature than Anakin. But that's only one facet of the show. That's just one character that they created that actually ended up working out, which was surprising, because I hated her.
She started out as an annoying, everyone hates character to a fan favorite character.
Agreed. But there's other reasons to watch the show. The stories got more interesting and more in depth, and one thing that I really liked was they made the clones actual characters.
Yes.
They turned them into individuals with individual personalities that you got attached to, and then in addition to that, they would kill them off. So they'd make you super attached. Even in just one episode, they'd make you super attached to this one clone, and then they'd kill him off. He's gone. And then in later episodes, so you'd have some of these clones around for 2 and 3 seasons, and then finally they just kill him off. He's gone, and this character that was beloved and that you really enjoyed watching was now gone. And so that was another draw to me, because they were willing to, you had these main characters, which were the Jedi, which you already know what's going to happen to them, so they obviously don't get killed. So they would insert characters in, make us care about them, and then kill them off. So you never knew which one of your favorite characters was actually going to get killed. And that's something that shows struggle with so much.
And it finally explores again what the movies did not. Like, the more politics of the situation, like how the clones feel basically being born to be cannon fodder. Mm-hmm. And you get to see that throughout it, and how the clones feel, and there's different renegade clones that they
and which clones are like, there's certain clones that favor Anakin, there's certain clones that favor Obi-Wan. Yeah. There's different people are tasked to different Jedi, and it's an interesting dynamic between the Jedi and the clones and how they interact.
And that's because 5 of the clones...
One second. We got a little taste of that in Revenge of the Sith with Cody and Obi-Wan. And Cody became a standout character, even though he wasn't in the movie that much. But fans loved him. And so they drew off of that. They brought Cody into the show. They brought a clone that was tasked specifically to Anakin into the show. So now they have their own little rivalry, and we already know that Cody survives, but all these other clones that they're throwing in here, they either don't survive to Revenge of the Sith, or they survive till after Revenge of the Sith. So the show got really, really good from seasons 1 through seasons 4.
Let me just put it this way. Can I put it this way?
Go ahead.
The show went from little kid toy commercial to actual Star Wars, and that's why it became good.
Yes. So we had that transition, and then it went from Star Wars to kind of super dark, kind of like beyond what I would let kids watch if I was in charge, and it was kind of jarring. Like it got really, really dark, especially towards the end of the 4th season.
And some episodes, can I speak?
Go ahead.
Some episodes just confused me. Like, there was an episode arc where there's this miniature leader, and he has to bring basically this collection of droids to do something. I can't remember the total plot. Was trying to be really deep thematically. I think that's what I was trying to do with is kind of themes of survival and stuff. I was really confused by the episode, though, and I didn't really understand what it was doing. And maybe some of that was I wasn't given enough credit because it is a kid's show. I just didn't understand where they were going with some of the storylines and some of the themes that they were doing.
There was some really, really good episodes. I like the second transition. So as Theresa said, there was a transition from little kid to Star Wars. Then there was a second transition from Star Wars to this weird, dark, just very definitely not for kids kind of themes.
I'm not saying I like it to understand where they're coming from. Star Wars has so much mythology and comics and books, and some of it does get very weird and very dark.
Again, I just question, this was meant to be a kids show, and so for them to have the pendulum swinging back and forth like this, it was just really weird.
Well, I think it was kind of like what it started out in a good way of being what Batman the Animated Series was, whereas it tried to be mature, but it didn't go to places that kids couldn't watch.
Yeah.
But it just got so dark to the level, I'm like, well, you're kind of isolating your audience now, and there are rumors that is the reason why it got canceled at season 6, that not only did Disney want to do other shows, but that some people were accusing it of becoming too graphic for a kid's show and too dark.
And that's especially for me why I stopped watching, because it got to the point where I was like, okay, this isn't really pleasurable to watch anymore.
The thing is, we quit and then we came back and it was good again, and then I saw it kind of getting weird, and not weird in the way of the episodes you're thinking of, just weird in where is this going and why, and I just start being as invested.
It started being more convoluted, because I do remember we kind of came back to it
since you said convoluted, I'll say another criticism of the show. I think this is just them kind of shooting themselves in the foot, because they did understand it. This is a 3-year Clone Wars show. There's only so much you can believably say happened in 3 years.
Yeah.
And in some ways they did it good, having a switch between characters and different groups and what they went through. But one of the things they did is there's an episode, the season 1 finale is about how they rescue one of Jabba's associates from the prison, and then in like season 5 or 4 they go back in like this 3 to 4 part episode explaining how that happened. There's like an episode where 3PO and R2 are going to get Padme something for a birthday party or something. A very strange episode to have in the midst of all this dark stuff, but they didn't even explain, oh, this happened back here. They expect the audience to figure it out, and I'm like, okay, so you're doing this, you didn't tell us, and you're jumping back 4 years ago to an episode that no one liked and that no one wanted to be explained.
Yeah.
Why are you doing that?
Yeah, so that's kind of like the point where I broke away was when it got really dark and graphic, because I just don't like to watch that. But then it just kind of, even after, it was like they tried to come back after that whole scene, and then it just kind of fell to pieces. So now what we're going to talk about is some of the most crucial episodes that you have to know about, because we talked about Ahsoka, we talked about why the show is compelling. Now we're going to talk about why the show could have continued to be compelling if they had finished it, because they ended up canceling it for a while. But we just watched some episodes today that we had never watched before. Theresa, explain to us what happened in these very crucial episodes.
Well, first I want to say that even as we were becoming disillusioned as the show, they still had good episodes. We just kind of dropped off because of some other things. But this episode, a 4-parter for the end of season 5, it details why Ahsoka and Anakin aren't not together, but as basically partners in Revenge of the Sith. And fans knew that had to be answered eventually, because she's not there.
Did she become a Jedi? Did she get killed? What happened to Ahsoka? Because she was not in Revenge of the Sith.
Well,
obviously.
They couldn't have her get killed because that would have been far too devastating for Anakin. They had to figure out something else. So this is a 4-parter, and I think it is as good as a movie, like a Star Wars movie. If Kelly, I want you to sit down and watch it in full, because I know you have multitasking. But so there is a bomb that goes off and in the Jedi Temple, and it not only it kills some Jedi, it kills clones, and it kills some civilians. So not only is the Jedi Council involved, but the Senate becomes involved, because they've just lost military men and civilians, and they think that it had to have been a Jedi. They explain it, but they think it had to have been a Jedi who was able to do that. And so the first episode is basically just exposition, building up the mystery and why they think it's a Jedi and who they find, and then it starts to to plant the seeds about how some people actually really don't like what the Jedi have become in the Coruscant. They feel like the Jedi are just warmongers now and being used by the Senate, and a lot of people don't like the war. And so we start planting the seeds of why Ahsoka is the first kind of baby blue-eyed about the Jedi, and like, oh, they wouldn't do anything wrong, and there can't be a Jedi behind this. And she starts having seeds of doubt planted in her once she starts hearing about how other people feel about the Jedi. And so then the second episode comes along and we really get into it, and Ahsoka is framed for murdering the person who they thought set off the explosions, and then she just things continuing to happen to
one thing led to another. She's then accused of she gets a card and she thinks it's Anakin helping her escape so they can find it out, but then she runs out of the room and she finds a bunch of clones killed, and she finds her lightsaber and a bunch of clones killed by her lightsaber, so someone has set her up as if she has done her escape and has killed all these clones, and then she runs off hoping to clear herself and find the actual culprit. But she just keeps finding these situations where she's being set up, and she runs into Ventress, who I know we haven't brought up yet, but it's a villain from the show, and I thought it was interesting how they paralleled their journeys, how Ventress became disillusioned by the Sith, and now Ahsoka is starting to doubt the Jedi more and more, as because she just has found that they just don't trust her with this situation whatsoever. And I'll talk about that in a second. And they really don't give her any kind of a chance. They just, there's evidence that she did this. She obviously did this. They don't really give her any kind of a fair trial.
I'll talk about that in a second.
It's Jedi damage control.
Yes, I'll talk about that in a second. There's a lot of great chase scenes, like in the end of episode 2, where you see Ahsoka's skill, because they're chasing her with all these weapons and all these tranquilizers, and you see how she figures out how to get out of the situations, whether it's different skill or just seeing where they're going to attack next.
It's like they were setting us up for what happens at the end.
Yeah.
You want to see the best of Ahsoka because something's going down.
You want to see how far she's coming. You wouldn't see her pulling off any of these moves in the first episode.
No.
I like how Anakin reacts because his ultimate fall is betraying the Jedi, but you see how he becomes more and more emotional, more and more Vader-like in his anger during this.
I mean, and he flips out in several occasions that is unusual even for his character within the Clone Wars.
Yeah. And then of course, how it ends is Ahsoka is first. Now, I'll talk about this. I do think it is a little forced to say that the Jedi would completely distrust Ahsoka or over circumstantial evidence. There was stuff in the episode about how they were being very pressured by the Senate to make some of these choices, and so that was a little bit forced. I think they tried to explain it, but ultimately Ahsoka decides the Jedi aren't really something.
Well, she's acquitted, first of all.
Yeah, they aren't life goals, and so she starts, and so. I think I also say this in terms of Ahsoka leaving, not only having the Jedi kind of turn on her and feel like everyone had turned on her at that point, but she had Barriss Offee, who was her friend. This is complete spoilers. Who was her friend, who she used to think no one would ever betray the Jedi and the Jedi Order like that. Who is discovered to have set off the bomb and set her up in this whole way. So she has that betrayal. So she ends up leaving to New Horizons. And this really sets up Anakin because
he's devastated that she leaves, first of all.
He distrusts the Jedi as well, like her, for doing this. He's devastated that she leaves, but he understands her reasoning and he kind of feels the same way.
He basically, the implication at the end of the episode is that he wishes he could go with her because he doesn't want to be part of the Jedi Order anymore.
I don't think...
Which is a really nice way of setting him up for Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, but I don't think he feels like he can leave because he tells Ahsoka that the Jedi Order is her life, and I think that's him projecting because he's been taken as a slave directly into the Jedi Order. So
he's basically been taken from one slavery to another.
He feels he has nothing else other than this, so I think he feels like he can't leave.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting how he's kind of projecting on her there.
Yeah, so that set of 4 episodes was it's really what the fans were looking for in a Clone Wars series, because we wanted reasons why Anakin went from, rebellious teenager in Attack of the Clones to this respected Jedi general in Revenge of the Sith, and why he had so many issues with the Jedi, because in Revenge of the Sith, obviously stuff had to happen before that to kind of set him up to be in this position, but we don't get to see that. You know, there's only so much you can put into a 3-hour movie. And even though Revenge of the Sith is the best of the prequels, and I think it actually does stand up well with the original trilogy, despite some errors.
Yeah.
Hang on, let me finish. We didn't get the context of here's all of the steps that it took Anakin to get to this point. And so this is what people wanted out of the Clone Wars series. Unfortunately, then they had an entire season, which Theresa and I actually haven't watched, or you may have watched some of it. I haven't watched any of it yet. There's an entire season that was Netflix exclusive release, I believe. And that season does not have any of Ahsoka in it, of course. There's some Revenge of the Sith tie-ins. I was reading some of the descriptions of episodes where it explains how Yoda became in contact with Qui-Gon Jinn and some things like that. But what happens is they didn't finish it. So they had a season 6, then the show gets canceled. They didn't actually get to Revenge of the Sith, which is the thing that the fans have been waiting. That's the whole reason to watch the show, because we're trying to get from Attack of the Clones to Revenge of the Sith. And so now Disney Plus has released season 7, which will be the final season, and gets us to Revenge of the Sith and what happens after.
It's giving us what the fans have been waiting for all 6 seasons of the Clone Wars and more years than that.
It's kind of a nice surprise, too, because even though the Star Wars franchise is kind of on the rocks right now, it's a nice surprise. You know, we weren't hung up on this because the show hasn't been consistently good all the time, nor has it been consistently bad. But it's a nice surprise to, okay, we finally get to finish this. You're finally going to give us what we wanted. We wanted to see how Luke and Leia get transferred to their homes.
Yeah,
we skipped over a lot of that and stuff like that.
This season is not only going to explore what happens up to Revenge of the Sith, but it's going to explore some things that happen after that. Yeah. And Ahsoka comes back and all that. We haven't seen her yet.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting. It's almost like the way Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was with Captain America Winter Soldier, because you had this massive movie that was completely destructive to the TV series, and then you got to see how the TV series reacted to this massive movie. Now we're going to get the same thing, years and years and years later, but we're going to get the same thing with the Clone Wars Season 7, because there's going to be this massive event that happens halfway through the season, or I don't know how far through the season they're going to go before they hit Revenge of the Sith, but there's going to be this massive destructive event of Revenge of the Sith, and then we get to find out how the characters react after that, which characters survive. We do already know from Star Wars Rebels that Ahsoka, as an adult, fights Darth Vader.
Interestingly enough, she doesn't know that he's Darth Vader for a long time.
Yeah. We may actually end up having to watch some of Star Wars Rebels just to wrap some things up in our minds.
Rebels, I've heard various things. Some people say
I've watched some of it.
Some people say it's as good as the Clone Wars. Some people say it isn't. I saw one episode and I saw some stuff and I thought that's good. And other stuff I'm like, I'm not really into this.
I would say it's probably not as good as the Clone Wars, but the Clone Wars doesn't really set that high of a standard, because, as I said, it's very inconsistent with, there's some seasons that are really, really good, and then there's some seasons that are really not great, and then there's some seasons that are like, oh, half of it was really good and half of it wasn't. So it's just kind of up in the air. And I haven't watched enough of Star Wars Rebels to be able to say, oh, it's really good here and it's not so great there.
I think the Clone Wars would be absolute gold if we could take out all the dumb episodes, and have just like the one where Obi-Wan goes undercover, the episode where you were talking about clones.
I need to go back and watch that.
The Pong Krell episodes where the clones find this basically psychopathic Jedi they have to follow.
Yeah.
That's another key episode. The Ahsoka episodes, everything that has to do with that. If you could just cut out all of the crap, then you would have the best thing ever.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that they weren't really able to hit any kind of consistent stride with that show, because I think they did hit a good stride between like season 2 and pretty much all of season 3, I think, and then, or maybe, I can't quite remember. It was season 2, season 3, and like the first half of season 4 that were like really, really good, and then season 4 it just was like, let's just double down on the dark stuff, and it just went completely, it was just too far for me. And I'm not saying that you can't have a show get dark, But when you have a show that's meant for kids and then you go that far to the point that kids probably ought not to be watching it.
It's a little bit shocking because when you're watching a show made for adults, maybe it goes too dark than you should think. But then when it's for kids, there's the shock of it.
Yeah, it's more shocking when you go that dark in a kids show. And I guess that's kind of what was the most off-putting element to me.
One last question, because I think we're kind of wrapping up to our time, are we? So we're 2 episodes into the last season, season 7. What do you think so far?
I mean, I'm really happy with it. One of the reasons is because I was super attached to the clones, and they're bringing back, I'm going to spoil a little bit of it, but they bring back one of the clones that we had thought was dead, and it was the clone that I was most attached to. And I'm very excited about it. I won't tell you who. You guys need to go and watch the show because this season is going to get really good. It's been consistently good for the first 2 episodes. They've both been good episodes, and I'm very excited about that. They also explain things like, you know, Anakin sneaking off to call
and Obi-Wan
Senator
thinks it's
Amidala,
very
and
obvious.
The fact that Obi-Wan very obviously knows and says things to Anakin, indicating that he knows and stuff like that. It's just very interesting to see how far, like, because people just on that one piece of plot right there, people are like, yeah, of course Obi-Wan would know.
I think it's great because after seeing how bad the Star Wars sequels were, I like seeing something where it feels like the writers have put effort into Star Wars, and I like being a part of the community where it feels like fans are excited for something that's Star Wars with this show. My only criticism is really a criticism. It's just sometimes with a show and when there's a lot of action and action at once, like with the last episode, it's a lot of action. Sometimes my brain tunes out just a little bit when I want more story.
That's kind of the problem I had with the first season of the show, but continue.
Yeah, so those are my quick thoughts. I think it's great so far, and I think it's going to get better as it goes along.
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really happy with the direction that they've been going with the show. And I highly recommend you start watching it. Again, as I said, the show is not consistently good, but it's good right now. So go ahead and
jump
watch
on board while we have good Star Wars.
Exactly. This is like the last straw that we have. Just holding on tight to the Star Wars franchise because it's all downhill from here, guys. So, like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to this channel.
Subscribe to my channel.
Subscribe to her channel, JesterBell. Follow us on Twitter. Ring the bell for notifications because why... I don't even know why people say that, but I'm telling you. Alright, we gotta get going because we're running out of time. So, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you on the next episode. Bye!